We are on location today at the YR Golf Performance Centre in Claremont, Cape Town, South Africa. And I am joined by what has become a very good friend of mine, but started out as my golf coach, Yusuf Raidhan. Good afternoon, welcome, and thank you for having me here today.
No, thank you, Jihad. It's a pleasure. Honestly, we've developed a great relationship over the last couple of years, and I know I don't need to say this, but I am very inspired by your work with the stuff that you're doing with golf and transformation and giving young kids in informal settlements the opportunity to take up this beautiful game. So thank you for everything that you do, and thanks for having me on this podcast. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Yusuf. Well, we started out, or we were introduced when I was still a member at Metropolitan, and I knew for a while that I needed golf lessons, but you know, we're always so reluctant or hesitant to take that step. But I took that step, and that's when I met you. You were still the resident coach at the time, and we had a lesson in person, and it was amazing. I loved, I think your style and your philosophy of coaching is what really resonated with me, and that's probably what made me come back for more lessons. So talk to us about why you got into golf.
Sure, absolutely. So my journey is a lot different to a lot of, let's say, if I'm comparing myself to golf coaches out there. I grew up in a very small country in the southeast of Africa called Malawi, a very small country, 15 million population, and golf was essentially non-existent. Exposure in golf was generally non-existent. But I mean, in terms of how I got into it, my dad played golf my dad was a sportsman. He played pretty much everything, and then as he was getting a bit older and older, he wanted to keep that competitive spirit and transitioned into golf. Around the time that I was I was born, and then I have an older brother who also took up the game, followed in my dad's footsteps, and as I was growing up, that's all I knew. So that's the only sport I knew. So my dad tells me all these stories about all these sports he played. And he's a great,
thank God for them.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I benefit now.
100%. But yeah, I was almost fortunate enough to, when I was growing up, my older brother and my dad were going to a golf course. And so I'd tag along and sort of spend a lot of time with them at the golf course. Not necessarily playing, or just being there. They had very strict regulations. I mean, now junior golf it's unbelievable what they're able to sort of do now at golf courses. They can just jump on and play. I mean, back then there was strict rules and regulations.
You wouldn't see kids there.
No, you wouldn't. You know, and I remember going to the golf course and crying because they tell me to wait till a certain time slot, and when the time slot would come, they'd be like, "Sorry, no, there's other groups, and you have to go home." So it was a bit of a barrier, but look, it just made me want it more. So I always look at it as a positive, and I just fell in love with the game. So we essentially in Malawi, we learned how to swing a golf club, how to behave on a golf course, how to sort of address certain scenarios through what we saw on TV, right? So I was fortunate enough to grow up in the Tiger Woods era when he was very dominant. So he was my idol sort of growing up, just looking at him, what he was doing, and that was the inspiration. But ironically, I was self-taught throughout that process. So I was,
as many of us tend to be.
Exactly, and the funny thing is whenever I tell the story, like, I'm obviously a golf instructor now, but I was self-taught up until the age of 16, 17, and not because I wanted to be self-taught. We just didn't have
exactly
the resources. And then at the age of 16, I was fortunate enough to leave Malawi, lived in the UK briefly, and was then able to join a golf college because that's what I wanted to pursue. I was super passionate about the game. I mean, it gives me goosebumps thinking about it. We just played golf out of pure love and passion. And one of my best friends, he'll know who he is when he's watching this. When we were growing up, we didn't care what the weather was like, right? It would be smashing it down with rain, but we'd be out there playing 18, 27, 36 holes. Our parents would drop us off 8 o'clock in the morning in our holidays and pick us up at 7 p.m. at night, pack us a lunch, and all we do is just play golf. No guidance, no direction. We just played it with pure enjoyment, which was, I wouldn't change for the world. So the trade-off is...
And sorry to interject, and I think sometimes we lose sight of that. We become so focused on getting better that we lose sight of enjoying the game in the same process.
100%. And it was never anything technical. We do silly things like replicate what we saw Tiger Woods doing on the weekend. Like talking to himself between shots and trying to get into the zone and all of those funny things. But honestly speaking, it was just out of pure passion and pure love. We played the game. And got relatively decent. I wasn't a world beater. It was just the game that I was probably good at in comparison to the other sports that I tried my hand at, But yeah, then obviously fast forward a couple of years, got the opportunity to be a part of a golf college in the UK, spent 3 years there. That was just a whole new world for me. A boy from Malawi walks into this crazy golfing world, right? You got Dennis Pugh there, who's the coach to Francesco Molinari, who's on the range with you giving you a golf lesson. You've got all this equipment, all this technology, and it was wild. I was like, what is this? And I thought I knew a lot. I knew nothing at all. But that was an amazing 3 years, really set the foundation for me to further pursue it. Got a scholarship to the States after that, spent some time in Florida. But I was so engrossed in achieving my end goal, which was becoming a playing professional, that the idea of college golf wasn't as appealing as I thought it would be, because the academics were a huge part of it. So it was taking up a lot of time. So you're sitting in a classroom in beautiful weather in Florida, and
your mind is on the fairway.
You're thinking about things, exactly. But we had, obviously growing up in Malawi, very close to Johannesburg. My parents wanted me closer as well. They were like, there's a lovely golf school in Johannesburg, why don't you join there? And it was called TGSC at the time, sorry. It's now called BSI. And I joined in 2014, I think it was. And just the elite program, just trying to play golf, and that's it. Just trying to make it, practicing, playing every day. Got injured in 2014. 2015 gave Sunshine Talk U School a crack, didn't make it, and then gave up the game. So I was like, I'm done. This is too much for me mentally, physically. Moved back to Malawi and joined the family business. And then 2 years in, I realized that I'm wasting a lot of time and energy that I've put into this sport, which is what inspired me then to move back to Johannesburg and start my PGA diploma. So went back to BSI, and I was the oldest guy in the class by a couple of years. I was the dad of the class, but I sort of...
Well, I think more so than not throwing away years already invested into it, it must have been the passion for the game that pulled you back.
Oh, 100%. It was just, sitting in an office, working a day job in my family business. I was like, man, I just don't envision my life going like this. I need to secure or cement a job in the industry that I'm super passionate about. Look, at this point, still the main goal was to play for a living. But we know it's difficult. And I came back, and at that time, I was getting very serious with my fiance then, wife now. And we then got married the year that I actually moved to Johannesburg, and then that sort of shifted my mindset completely. I was like, look, okay, you're probably want to make a bit of a career change, change in career path, stay within the industry. And then obviously I was offered the job at Metropolitan Golf Club as the head teaching professional, and I sort of took it, and I was like, let's give this a go. And since then, my life, my wife will tell you this, everything is just dedicated to my instruction. So research, studying, everything I watch, everything I do surrounds instruction. I've committed my life to it basically, and absolutely love it. I don't think there's no better joy than sitting with a golfer or having a lesson with them and they tell you that they played the best round of golf.
Fantastic.
I love what I do, and I'm so glad I made the choice.
And I'm so glad that you came back to it. Like I said, I'm benefiting from that decision now, as are golfers all over the world, and that is a point that I'm going to get into now. The purpose or the topic of today's discussion is not necessarily Yusuf being my coach. He's great at it. In fact, when I leave, I feel that, you know what, screw my age, I can also still make it on the PGA Tour.
Love it.
But that's how passionate he is in terms of investing the skills and the knowledge that he's got into each and every one of his clients. But the purpose of today's discussion is to focus on online coaching or remote coaching. Golf is steeped in tradition where we think that it has to be done a certain way. And we see Live Golf shaking things up a bit precisely because of that. It's been the same for decades, And COVID has triggered innovation in ways that we would never have imagined if it didn't happen, or at least accelerated it by a number of years because of the way we had to adapt our lives. So obviously then COVID came at the beginning part of your career path shift. You know,
Right.
so you've just started out coaching and then boom, courses are closed, the world is closed, and you know, business is closed. What did that feel like for you, and how did that morph into the discovery of online coaching?
I think at the time, because I was so invested with teaching in person, the thought didn't really cross my mind. When COVID did obviously come for the first time and we were sitting at home and doing nothing, I think it was more about, okay, that was an opportunity for me. I used that opportunity to further enhance my teaching skills. So I remember going down a rabbit hole during those 4 or 5 months where it was just studying and research. How can I use this time to continue to enhance my skills as an instructor? So at that time, it was never, I didn't think to myself, okay, I want to open up an online coaching business. But what did happen, social media is powerful, is a couple of months into it, you start seeing this, obviously online coaching becoming a little bit of a thing, Skillist app and what they're trying to do. Skillist app's the online coaching platform and what they're trying to achieve, and people are jumping onto it, and you know, coaches that I follow are posting how they're giving lessons through this app. But again, you know, I thought about it and I was like, okay, you know, but yeah, I'm still 100% committed to what I'm doing in person, and that's what I'm going to do. And I wanted to enhance my ability to give better golf lessons. But then that quickly changed within a couple of months after that. So once we started coming back out of COVID, and the more I started seeing with what the Skillist app were doing and where online coaching was headed, I was like, wait a second here. This is something that's extremely could be extremely powerful. I think everyone was walking into an unknown when it comes to online coaching. I think coaches and players alike. I think
Yeah, and that is something I wanted to touch on. I think you must have been as much, if not more, uncertain and apprehensive about shifting that way as potential clients.
Oh, 100%. Because, look, I feel if you're taking golfers' games personally, like you want them to get better, you don't want to ever leave any stone left unturned, right? So the physicality to it is a huge component, right? So yes, absolutely. And initially I sort of brushed it under the carpet quite a lot. You know, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? But again, the more I sort of thought about how I want my own career to pan out and where I want to be in, let's say, 5 years from then, a couple of years from now, it started becoming a huge part of the equation. Because essentially as golf coaches, again, we'll get to how powerful it is, but we sell our time for money, right? So we are the business. Now, when you are solely dependent on in-person coaching, right? If you get sick, if you're not present, if you want to spend time with your family, you have limitations in that regard. Whereas online coaching completely sort of took that barrier away from us. So when I was looking at online coaching, I was like, okay, I need to figure out a way in communicating the message where I'm still getting golfers better, because that's what I care about. But a huge motivating factor was, let's figure that out. Let's figure out how we can get golfers better through online coaching, because this could be extremely sustainable. This could help open up opportunities for you to give you the lifestyle that you want.
Given businesses were operating remotely, they were doing their meetings
Correct.
virtually as well. So there certainly was merit to at least consider the shift.
Oh, 100%. No, without a shadow of a doubt. But because you see, again, you mentioned this, and golf is very much a stubborn game in terms of its approach to certain things. And we experience that at golf clubs, and we also experience that within individuals that are coaches or are part of the industry. We want things to be a certain way. I would consider myself old-fashioned, you know? But the more I dug into it, it just started getting more and more appealing. That, wait a second, it can work. You can find ways to make it work. One of the biggest sort of obstacles was the uncertainty was overriding. So it's like, okay, but then how are you gonna go through these obstacles? Like, how are you gonna figure out how, if a golfer messages you say this doesn't make sense, in an in-person lesson, you can just say, listen, this is what you need to do, right? Get into this position.
Yeah.
Whereas from an online perspective, it's like, wait, like how are you going to do that? So it was going to be a whole new learning experience for someone like me that was just learning the ropes anyway. It was like, okay, this is going to add to that. But definitely had a lot of merit. Yeah.
Yeah. In a few minutes or so, we'll actually be talking to one of Yusuf's clients that's based in the States and get a first-hand account of his experience and how he has turned to online coaching and how it has impacted his life. But before we get there, Tommy, the Skillist app, how does that work? Where do people find it? How do they find you? And what are the range of services that you offer there?
So Skillist is basically an app that you download onto your phone from the App Store or the Play Store. And in terms of marketing, look, Skillist do a good job in sort of incentivizing coaches that are doing well on the platform to sort of get them into their top sort of ranked coaches, where when someone does download the app and sees that when they see what coaches are available, you'll probably be one of the first few that come up. So they have a couple of
so it's like Google ranking.
Correct, essentially, yes. And which is great. They have a big following on social media, so they share a little bit of your stuff. But the main form of marketing is through social media. Instagram's a big one for me. That's my main focus. That's where I try and push or try and sort of reach out to golfers and get the message out there to say, look, this is very powerful. Online coaching is powerful. I'm starting to firmly believe that it's a better way to learn. I will get into that shortly, but Instagram's a huge one, getting the message out there. And in terms of service offerings, so going back to the point about the obstacles of getting the message across as clearly as I possibly could, a lot of my structure has remained the same from when I first started, because that's the way I felt would yield the best results and keep communication efficient and effective. But the structure is designed to make sure we leave no stone left unturned. That's the goal. And it's not just video analysis. It's not just, looking at two swings face on and down the line and saying, okay, this is what you're doing, this is what you're going to do. There's so much more to it. So my structures offer those type of lessons, but coupled with drills that they're supposed to be doing. I call it a diagnosis video, so visuals in terms of what they're doing and where the breakdown is. And then I also tie in what I call performance calls. So a lot of my online stuff, especially my subscription model, is all goal orientated. So I have a phase-by-phase approach. We set the goals out right in the initial consultation, and then we build from there. But the month basically consists of a performance call at the beginning of the month, a performance call at the end of the month, and we actually have a live Zoom lesson in between. So the golfer takes their phone, their headphones. Often I tell golfers to invest in a tripod, and they're there on the driving range for 30 minutes to an hour, and I'm there watching them actually hit balls.
I think most golfers have tripods anyway.
Absolutely, we're a crazy bunch.
So if we look at technology, it has been used in golf more and more at the performance level. Where we see Bryson DeChambeau going crazy about data. Ball striking and his smash factor and all of these things, swing speed, ball speed, and more and more golfers are making use of technology to enhance their performance. So naturally, it will trickle through to the coaching aspect as well, and that too is picking up. If we consider how we started improving ourselves by watching other golfers on YouTube, it's certainly much better watching yourself on a video and being coached through that process.
100%. So there's the thing about, as golfers learning digitally, I have a lot of golfers in person that say, I ask them, how long you've been playing golf? What's your main form of instruction? The first thing they say is YouTube. So I think there's great coaches on YouTube. I think they're doing there's awesome content out there that I study from, I research, but it's not personalized. And I think so you are trying to pick up a few key pointers from what that specific coach is telling you, but it's like you said, it's not tailored for you.
There's no feedback.
Yeah,
you don't know whether or not you're replicating or if it's right for you.
Well, I've never looked at it that way. You've just brought that up now, and it's true. We spend a lot of golfers spend thousands of hours looking at instruction on YouTube. Yes, obviously it's free content, and they're trying to sort of pick up as much as they can, but they're essentially learning digitally, right? So if you look at it from that perspective, jumping onto online coaching shouldn't be that much of a huge jump. I've never looked at it that way, so that's interesting.
And before we cross over to Wade, tell us, what is the biggest misnomer that you've experienced with people not wanting to shift to online coaching?
I think there's a preconceived notion that there needs to be physical presence for you to improve. Okay, number one. Number two, yes, you have a certain demographic that aren't as technologically savvy, right? So they're a little bit more apprehensive, okay? Where it's just too much for them. You know, it's too much admin to get a phone and video swings and get the angles right and so on and so forth. And thirdly, you get golfers that feel that online coaching won't help with the game because of factor one and factor two, right? But the more I do it, and I touched on this and I said I personally feel it's a better way to learn. And I'll explain why. And I see this in my in-person coaching. So I think we've had this conversation. I said to you, I want to be 90% online in the next year, right? The reason for that is I firmly believe that I can get more golfers better through my online programs than in person. And the reason for that is a golfer comes to me for a golf lesson, right? And the general average of the consistency in terms of how often they come for a lesson is 4 to 6 weeks apart, okay? You do get the golfer that is in a financial position to do so, that can come in once a week or once every fortnight, but your average golfer will come 4 to 6 weeks. After that one golf lesson, they go away and they're on their own accord. They are practicing and playing, etc. There's no real communication between coach and player.
Yeah.
So then they come back for the second lesson, and essentially 90% of the time, I won't say all the time, 90% of the time, we're doing lesson one again. Okay, you've creeped into this.
I've actually been in that position myself with you.
There we go, 100%. And you've just come off your little breaks, your injury break. So we sort of revisited the same field. Now with online coaching, because of its convenience, because of its consistency and how much you can communicate with your coach, so much easier to stay on the right track. So then you ask yourself, okay, there's a trade-off here.
Yeah. You're more connected.
Correct. And there's a trade-off. So there's no physicality involved, but you get a golf coach that's checking in with you. I work on a 10-day, between my two programs, one of them I work on a 10-day cycle, one of them is just completely unlimited. But even with the 10-day cycle, those golfers know that after 10 days, they need to check in with me. We need to make sure that this thing on the right track. So the trade-off is you've got someone that's checking in on you, or you're checking in with your coach every 10 days, plus physicality. Which one is more beneficial? I don't have the answer to that, but the results are speaking for themselves. The fact that we're able to communicate more consistently, the fact that we are checking in so consistently, golfers are staying on the right track, and it's much easier for them to develop. And as a result, shoot better scores. That's what it's all about.
And I think also it's a way for you to contribute to the golfing community globally. You know, all coaches who are coaching online now have an opportunity to impact the life of a golfer at any part of the world. And I think it's a very nice value to add to the community, because we've got Wade that we'll chat to in a bit. He's sitting all the way in the States, but his game has been improved by someone sitting in Cape Town, you know, and you've never met before. And I think that's amazing about this technology. So we've just spoken about, you know, how I got to meet Yusuf and the role that he's played in my golfing journey. And we've dipped into the pros and cons of traditional golfing versus online or remote golfing, you know, and the benefits thereof. But what better to kind of expound on how this can impact and improve the quality of a game than someone who's actually been through it. So right now we are joined by Wade, who is based all the way in Oregon in the United States. It's very early there in the morning, so we really thank him for setting aside the time before work. I think it's just after 6 a.m. in the morning. And Wade, welcome. We are so lucky to have you here with us. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk and to talk about Yusuf. It's been a great journey so far.
Thanks, Ray.
Fantastic. So we've just been talking about the benefits of online coaching. So talk to us about, your golfing journey, when you started, what your handicap is. Have you been through traditional live coaching with an in real life coach? And what kind of triggered the shift to online coaching?
Yeah, so I won't try to go too far because I'm getting up there in years now. I played a lot of golf as a youngster through all my schooling, high school, and then I played college golf. After college, I even did a brief professional stint, played a couple of mini tour events, things like that. Did some teaching myself, and then had a family, got married, and golf took a back burner for a long time. Kind of didn't do it much for about 12, 15 years or so, and then decided as my kids grew up and to get back into it. Started looking again to be competitive. And to be honest, it's tough to find the right coach. Portland, Oregon is a fairly golfing community, and there are a lot of coaches around, but finding the right connection and that sort of thing. And then I was turned on to Skillest by a friend of mine, and I took a look at it, and it was just seemed really intriguing to me, and did some searching around and reached out to Yusuf, and he was immediately just very inviting and talked to me about what was going to happen. And as I've gotten more into it and done more lessons with him, I kiddingly have joked with him. I wish I could have found him when I was 17 years old, because I think my golfing journey would have been a whole lot different. One of the it's really, for what they'd be like you just mentioned, right, all the way around the globe, right? I mean, here I am in Oregon, and you guys are in Cape Town, and it's like, holy moly, who would have ever thought that I'd have a coach that far away? One of the aspects that I really love about it too is, even though we have all these time differences and big distance, Yusuf is there. Like, I mean, I can literally message him at any time, and I know if it's not in the middle of the night, he's going to get back to me soon. And that's a totally different relationship than I ever had with a golf coach before.
You were put onto the Skillest app by a mate of yours, and it seems like the shift was pretty easy for you. But given that golf is steeped in tradition, how easy was it for you to say, you know what, let me give the online digital version a go, instead of going to a real life coach?
Yeah, I would be lying if I wasn't a little bit apprehensive at first, for sure. Because especially being immersed in that traditional format for most of my life as well, I was like, how is this going to work? What kind of feedback am I going to get? It's definitely different, right? I mean, I having my AirPods in and talking to Yusuf, and he's watching me through video, live feeds and stuff like that. It's definitely different than what I was used to with, a coach, maybe manipulating club and, putting a hand on your shoulder and going, okay, turn here, that sort of thing. But admittedly, that apprehension went away pretty quickly. Yusuf made it very user-friendly. And, like I said, the feedback maybe is a little bit different, but honestly, I think it's probably better, because there's a way for me to work through some things too. So it's like, feel versus real, and what Yusuf explained to me, then I could kind of talk through it with him and making sure that I'm getting it. And so there's maybe a little deeper understanding there as well. And again, that connectivity, I think a lot of people think that, an online coach would, okay, they're going to analyze a video, and then, 2 months later you see him again. And it's not like that at all. I mean, like literally, after my round on Saturday, I sent Yusuf some stats and stuff, and instantly he was back to me and said, okay, tell me more about this. And it's just, even though we've never physically seen each other, I feel like, hey, I know Yusuf, and I know he's got my best interest at heart. And so it's been really, really cool. Amazing.
Yusuf, maybe from a coach's perspective, talk to us about Wade's baseline. When it came to you, what his biggest need was in terms of enhancing his performance, and how you've managed to take him through that process, add value to his game, improve it a bit, without that, that physical touch that Wade mentioned he was a bit apprehensive about not having in the beginning. And now he says that, it might actually be better that way.
I think from a technical standpoint, there were clearly a couple of areas that we felt together that we could improve to continue to enhance his ball flight and strike. That's what it comes down to. Simply, that's what we're always looking at, right? How do we fix ball flight? How do we create predictability in strike? And that's where we sort of started the journey from. Everything's pretty much structured. I work on a 10-day cycle with Wade, so every 10 days we'll revisit it, and if we have achieved that specific move, we will then move on to the next sort of piece. And the cool thing about what Wade and I did is, because he has the golf IQ and because he's played at a high level, I think laying out the blueprint for him was much easier because he had understood the terminology. I'm not saying that terminology was technical, but he definitely understood the terminology quite well.
So what was one of your biggest uncertainties, or your biggest fears with going the online route, and how quickly was that dismissed through your experience with Yusuf and the Skillest app?
That's a great question. I guess my biggest fear would just be that little bit of that disconnect that I was talking about, the idea of like, Yusuf wouldn't be able to actually say, okay, you need to feel this or feel that. But as he said, he laid out a blueprint in like, okay, and here's what I really liked about Yusuf, and I, maybe different learning styles and such, right? As he said, I have some background in golf, right? And so I kind of wanted to know where we were going and why he was telling me to do the things he was telling me to do. And he made that very clear. And once I kind of got that, even if I don't get it right away, because everybody's learning, path is different, right? Sometimes things will click right away, and other times we might, have to keep working through some stuff. And it's like, I know where you want me to be at the top or whatever, but I'm not quite getting there. But we could use video feedback and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, my apprehension was gone pretty quick because Yusuf, like I say, laid out a nice blueprint and was able to tell me, okay, this is why I want you to do these things. When we get there, then we can go to the next thing. And that's one of my own personal things. I know I get ahead of myself, right? When I played on Saturday, it's like, gosh, I'd like to have a lower ball flight there. I'd like to be able to do this and do that. But I also got to remind myself, okay, wait, we got process to do here, right? I gotta get that club shallowed out and keep it shallowed out on a consistent basis. And when I get under the gun too, another thing that Yusuf does really well is like, pressure. Even if it's not playing in a tournament or just playing on your own, and like he said, I'm a competitive guy. I want to get better, right? And different from the range than to the golf course, and I got to remind myself of that as well. And Yusuf's really good about talking through those things and saying, hey, look, once you ratchet up the pressure, some of these old habits might creep in, that sort of thing. But yeah, the apprehension went away pretty quickly. I mean, and actually, my biggest apprehension was I was afraid, like kind of too, like, oh, we'd get one lesson and I wouldn't hear from him, and then do another lesson and it'd be disjointed. It's not like that at all. If anybody had any apprehension about that, it's not. It's like I really feel like I have. I mean, I know Yusuf's got lots of students, but I feel like I have a personal coach. Like and that's a really cool feeling to be able to message him and say, hey, this is what happened, or hey, I did this on my round today, and that sort of thing, and it's pretty instantaneous.
That's quite remarkable because you can have a real life coach and you can still have a disconnect in terms of communication and transferring information. So it's very encouraging to hear that that doesn't exist within this particular environment. And you mentioned driving to or going from the range to the golf course and putting those things into place, and that brought up another question for me, which is how much convenience has this added to your life as a progressing golfer?
Oh yeah, I mean it's because there's a lot of flexibility, right? That time zone differences aside, we could kind of do whatever we want to and when we need to. And then also it gives a really good structure to my practice, right? I'm like, if I go to the range tomorrow, I know what Yusuf has laid out for me to work on, and that's what I'm going to work on. And I'll do my block practice, and then I'll do my fields, that sort of thing. Then I'll take some video you know, nowadays with the good old iPhone, pretty easy enough. And then I could send it to him. And then, like I say, right away, I get some feedback from him as well. So it is, yeah, it's very convenient in that regard. Um, you know, you're not, you know, your typical club pro might be doing, you know, lots of group lessons and such during the day and what have you. And I can kind of do this at my leisure, right? Whenever I can go get video, I can send it to Yusuf, and I'll get instant feedback. And then if it just doesn't happen very often, but if, you know, in the feedback from him, if I like, I didn't quite understand that, I literally just send like a text message. In no time, Yusuf is back to me. It's like, okay, this is what I meant by that, or yeah, try that. So it is very convenient.
Yusuf, before I let Wade go and start his work day on Friday, is there anything in particular that you want to touch on before he says goodbye?
No, I think he's covered all grounds. I think he's been very nice to me as well, which has been nice. But no, it's been awesome working with Wade, honestly speaking. I think when we talked about doing this podcast, you asked me to, no offense to any of my other online students
Before you say that, because I was going to use this as my closing statement, you know. You mentioned earlier that he's got so many online students, and, you know, we had this discussion the other day where he's seeing a shift of his online customers versus his in real life customers, and of all those, he chose you, and he's going to tell us why now.
No, but I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, like Wade touched on, I think we've developed a personal relationship as well, which has been great, which I try and do to a certain extent with all my golfers. I think having a personal relationship is very important for someone to believe in your theories and philosophies and to actually buy into what you're saying. But more importantly, Wade's been one of the people that I've been working with the longest. I think we're close to months 5 or 6 now, Wade, if I'm not mistaken. So it has been a while. And I thought Wade, and look, nothing of this is sort of, we haven't had a chat about this at all. This is just us. It's a very raw environment. And the reason why I chose Wade was because I knew that he'd have probably the best insight on what online coaching is all about. So thanks, Wade. Appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Like I say, it's been great work with you. I'm looking forward to this season and furthering the journey. And yeah, I feel like we're gonna have some great talks down the road as well. So I appreciate you guys having me on today.
Thank you. We appreciate your time, and I hope that we get to play a round of golf sometime soon when I visit the States again. I might be there sometime soon, fingers crossed for the next live event, but let's see. But Wade, thanks once more for your time. Best wishes with your golf journey, and we hope that you get the result you're looking for.
Cheers, Wade.
Have a great day, guys.
Bye.
Before we wrap up, I need to kind of qualify why I decided to talk to Yusuf. So my experience with Yusuf has been incredible. He's a very technical instructor, and his philosophy aligns with mine as well. Apart from the social development side of golf, I just like the way you teach, and that has translated into great results over a relatively short period of time. So this is not just me blowing his horn for the sake of having him on the show. It's someone that I've got first-hand experience with, and the results I can testify for. So if you are looking for a coach, please don't hesitate to give Yusuf a call. Doesn't matter where in the world you are. I've got a couple of, technology has been so amazing that we are able to grow our golfing communities globally through social media. So I engage as much with my virtual friends as I do with my in real life friends, and sometimes even more so. So I encourage you to reach out to him on the platform, Skillist or his social media platforms. Get in touch and give it a go. I know you've been running some trials to subscribers who have never, or people who have never subscribed to an online coaching platform with you before. Give it a go. You've got nothing to lose. Now that we've chatted to Wade, you will get that first-hand testimony to see how it has been a positive experience for him, and hopefully that will encourage you to find the help that you need. Yusuf, thank you so much for your time. It's been great chatting to you as always. It's always good to connect on the developments and the advancements of technology and how it can add value to people's lives. And I'm excited that we are using this to our advantage in terms of adding value to the global golfing community. I wish you well.
Thank you.
And hopefully we get to play that round of golf soon.
I look forward to it. Thanks so much for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thanks. Cheers, buddy.